Next up, we have Aatif Awan coming up. He's a founding managing partner with Indus Valley Capital. Aatif is also a friend. He was the VP of Growth at LinkedIn. And he's also the board director for Atoms, which is a shoe company with Pakistani founders, and Airlift, and he led seed round for both companies. Join me, Aatif. And please, let's give a warm welcome to Aatif. I see the room has really filled up, so let the claps also be louder.
Thank you. All right. I want all of you to close your eyes. No, really do it. I'm watching. Now imagine some moment in your past where you had to make a decision with incomplete information, with lots of risk and uncertainty, but you still did it. And some point in future, you looked back and it made sense. The dots connected. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. You can open your eyes now. Now, I want to share one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs with you. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And today here we are talking about taking a bet on Pakistani startup ecosystem. And then that's where you have to trust that those dots would connect in the future for you. And what I want to do is not just talk about the numbers about the startup ecosystem. I think we have had that shared a lot, and I'll do some of that. But I want to share my personal story of how these dots connected for me. How is it that I am moving back and have started a fund to exclusively invest in Pakistani startups versus doing VC in the Valley or versus doing another product and growth role in the Valley. So I'll take you back in different years and jump around the timeline a bit. Grew up in Pakistan, went to the US, study computer science, University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And the year is 2004. Microsoft has come to campus for internship interviews. And I'm thinking, I'm very technical, I love coding. I'm going to go and apply for a software engineering job, and I'm interviewing for that. The first interviewer, within 10 to 15 minutes, asks me, hey, have you thought about being a PM? And I did not expect that. In fact, I didn't know what a PM was. So I asked them, I was like, no, but tell me what a PM is. And they tell me about the role, and without knowing that complete information, I got excited, and I said, okay, this sounds interesting, let's do it. So they switched the interviewers on fly for me. I talked to PMs instead of engineers, got a PM internship offer, eventually joined Microsoft full-time as a PM, and did product management for the next 15 years in my career, never wrote a single line of code based on that one moment. And it was great, it's awesome. As I joined Microsoft, I went through a few different products, and that was sort of the exploratory phase. You learn. I did some, so I learned enterprise products. I did a developer platform, and eventually realized that I've loved consumer products. And after I got that exposure, decided to move to Bay Area to do consumer. So I joined LinkedIn in 2011. So the year is 2011. And I started doing growth for LinkedIn, built out the growth team over the next 7 years. And that team was responsible for growing LinkedIn's member base internationally by 500 million members. It was a phenomenal experience for me to be able to do that. And it was really a dream job because you're working for a mission-driven company. You're working with incredible people. But 5 years in, I started thinking about, look, as awesome as this is, I want to do something new now. And I started plotting for that. I knew it was going to be a difficult transition conversation with some really senior folks, but fate had other plans for me. So the year is now 2016, and one day I get a message from Jeff Weiner, who's the CEO of LinkedIn, He's my direct manager at that point. Hey, come see me in the afternoon. So I'm a little nervous because it's super urgent. And I go and I sit down and he says, hey, you worked at Microsoft, right? And he's smiling. And I have no clue what he's talking about. And like, why are you asking that? And he says, why do you think I'm asking you that? And he smiles again. And then it took me a couple of tries, and I guessed that actually Microsoft was acquiring LinkedIn, so it was full circle back for me. And I decided to stay around at LinkedIn and actually ended up leading the product integrations between those two companies, which was a phenomenal experience, and that allowed me to further strengthen my network and build relationships and get a completely new experience with Microsoft. So that's the LinkedIn and Microsoft story, right? Now I'll take you a little bit back. And in parallel, I've been angel investing in the US for a while, right? And I've invested in different sorts of consumer companies. I get a tweet from Waqas Ali. He is founder of Markhor, and I'd been following their story. How many people have heard of Markhor? Show of hands. Yeah? So inspiring story. So Waqas and Sidra, we go hang out at this Afghani restaurant in San Francisco, have chapli kebabs. You know, they tell me their story. I love it. And they're still working on Markhor. So I tell them, look, I love to work with you, but Markhor ain't it. The market is too small. And they were also reaching that conclusion themselves. So this is around the time where they started Atoms, and I ended up investing in them. So just for people who have not heard their story, Waqas and Sidra went from a small village in Okara, which is in Punjab, and basically they decided they were going to build a world-class company from day one that's going to make the best shoes, and they're going to sell those shoes all around the world. And this is 2014. And 2014 Pakistani startup ecosystem is nothing like what it's today, right? And they don't have rich friends and family, so they can't raise from them. There's some angel investors, so there is a little bit, but that's not enough. They actually do a Kickstarter from Pakistan telling the world that we're going to make shoes in Okara, and we'll sell you these shoes. And there is $100,000 on that Kickstarter, one of the most successful Kickstarters at the time. And as incredible as that is, they top it up next year by applying for Y Combinator, the top incubator in the world, and they get into YC, and they're the first Pakistani startup to get into YC, and they're also the first shoe startup to get into YC. So breaking barriers. Their story never ceases to inspire me. So they raised an $8 million Series A recently. They announced it from some very top investors, including some former YC partners. The middle picture, this is them in front of their new pop-up in Soho, New York. It's doing very well, very exciting. And then their fan base is really amazing. Johnny Ive from Apple has written them a handwritten note, like how much he loved the shoes. Serena Williams is a fan, and our very own Mudassar Sheikha is also a fan and an investor along with me. They've also become very good friends over time. And one of the things that I want to see more in the Pakistani startup ecosystem is that investors and founders, they're not at two different ends of the table, actually, fighting against allocations. It's about building something together, and you are going to do this over probably at least 5 years, maybe a decade. So I actually get so involved, like we're such good friends. And as I was coming there, like I got this lovely note from them, and these shoes that I'm wearing saying that we hope these shoes help you electrify the startup ecosystem. So I'm wearing it to honor them, and really delightful for the friendship and the opportunity I've gotten through them. So as this was happening, 2 years passed, Microsoft LinkedIn integrations have gone well, and I start plotting my next move again, and I basically convinced Jeff that I'm going to leave and take a year off, so I took a gap year. And I traveled, spent time with the family, goofed around with my nephews, got net metering installed in family homes, lots of fun stuff. But the more important part is that while I was here, people like Jahara, they invited me to startup events, Fatma, Rizwan, and I started getting involved with the startup ecosystem. And then that's when I realized what an amazing, incredible opportunity existed here. Because what had happened in Indonesia and China and US and India was going to happen here, and it felt like that was the right time. So that's when I really started, talking to more and more founders, meeting them, And that's when, Yusuf John made an intro through Usman Gol in January. I had met him. Then March 22nd, 2019, 2 months after I had met him, I get an email from Usman Gol with the subject line, 77 rides per day today, exclamation mark. That number looks small, but if you take into account the fact that this guy just moved back 2 months ago and he's built a team and he's convinced transporters to paint their buses red and they're actually live and they have an app that's getting good ratings and they're growing 20% week over week, I was all over it and we got on a call and this line is amazing. Usman Gol said in this first email, we know we are onto something big. And boy, was that an understatement. They are really, really going for it. So that's when I knew that this is it. The three things, the dots connected for me, I had done up to this point in my career, which is product and consumer growth, which is investing. I have experience with that. And then Pakistani knowledge. I grew up here, come back every year. The intersection of that is exactly the thing I need to be doing for the next 10 years. And that's why I decided I was going to start Indus Valley Capital, and that fund is going to exclusively invest in Pakistani startups because this is a much better opportunity than anything I can do in Silicon Valley right now. All right, so now we will cover some numbers. This is my case, and I'd go quickly through that to stay on time. So you always start with demographics, and we talked about the total population number quite a bit, but what's amazing is that 130 million people under the age of 30, right? And then another, 66 of them are under 15. So these are people who basically are technology natives, right? So their adoption rates are going to just accelerate. And what's incredible is that Pakistan is actually more urban than India. And because of this demographic trends, over the next couple of decades, for every single retiring person, they'll be replaced with 3 young people entering the workforce. So imagine the productivity boost that Pakistan is going to see through the next decade. So regardless of what the macro looks right now, just these demographic dividends are going to take us very far. The middle class looks incredible. It's going to grow to 122 million by 2025, the largest increase after China and India, and that's a very important component. And that middle class drives massive growth in consumer spending. So today, Pakistan is doing $257 billion in consumer spending. This will grow to $360 billion in 2025. And one of the issues with these metrics when people look at GDP is that Pakistan's GDP is underreported, and we over-index on consumption. So I think this is a much better metric for startups to track. And what that does is it's creating these verticals. So you have $19 billion in transport. You have a large food industry. Clothing and retail is massive. So in each of these startup verticals, there is a large enough startup waiting to happen. And the talent, this is the superpower that Pakistan has. If you sort the world's countries by talent, you have US, China, India, and then Pakistan. The top 3, their markets are so big, they're so caught up in them that they're not going to go and, address MENA or anything. For us, Pakistan will nail, and it's the Pakistani startups who are going to go and take over MENA is my thesis, right? Because Gulf just not have that much enough talent on their own. So some numbers, 360K developers, 300 plus startups started last year. I'm sure this year the number is closer to 500. Lots of incubators, and we have 3 unicorns with R&D in Pakistan. So there is a very large talent pool that's already building these massive companies, even though they're focused on other markets. So what's the problem? The problem is that we remain materially undercapitalized, although this is getting addressed quickly. So what this metric is doing here is looking at venture capital invested last year in 2018 as a percentage of GDP. So it normalizes across countries, right? And you see that US used to be the gold standard. China is now ahead of US. Indonesia has gotten really overheated. And again, Indonesian analogy is interesting because 10 years ago, nobody would want to invest anything, and now everybody's running there. So that's going to happen to Pakistan in 10 years. You'll have too much capital. But right now we don't. We actually only have 0.01% on this metric compared to 0.39% for India and 0.03% for Egypt. So even compared to Egypt, we are off by a factor of 3. But this is getting addressed quickly, and the good news is Indonesia was in this place. They were getting tens of millions of dollars 10 years ago, and then they 100x this number, right? So that will happen for Pakistan. I think we'll get to 0.2%, hopefully in the next 3 years. So why now? That's a very important question, right? What's changed? And a lot of people I've talked to in Pakistan, especially people who were early on angel investing, They lost money. Some of them are jaded. Some of them are just disappointed, and they're like, okay, this market we've written off. Don't do that. Rear view mirror is much smaller than the windshield. Like, look at what the future holds. Things are getting very different, and the big reason is that we have 25x'd the number of broadband subscribers in the last 6 years. So if you came and started to do a startup in 2014, there's no users to be acquired. But now you can build something and acquire tens of millions of users. So that enabling thing just did not exist before. Remarkable improvement in security situation. So the left graph here is showing deaths due to terrorism incidents. This is third-party data from South Asia Terrorism Portal. We're at a 15-year low. So since 2014, every year there's been a massive drop. And we're going to soon be pre-9/11 levels. And the right stuff is homicide due to all causes, and Pakistan is 50% safer than US, which I love to tell my American friends when I'm visiting Pakistan. They tell me, be safe. And I quote this, and I'm like, actually, I feel safer in Pakistan than in the US. And then finally, this is the stuff that's super exciting, right? Like, we're having so many exits, so many big rounds. So, like Daraz and Easy Pass over 2018 stories, 2019, you've seen Baikia, you've seen Cheetah, and now Airlift since yesterday. And the 3 unicorns I mentioned, like massive R&D pools. Kareem obviously is this massive factor. There's a Kareem mafia that's, like already joining startups and doing new startups. That's super exciting. So all of that makes the timing really, really pertinent right now. Now, the final 2 points I want to make is, one, if you can learn anything from what Airlift was able to do, which is an incredible accomplishment, my dream, when 6 months ago I started this, was to bring a top-tier US VC to Pakistan. And I thought it would take 2 to 3 years. But it happened in 6 months only because the company was so good and the traction metrics were so good, not because I was connected with the investors. And if that shows me, if you build a rocket ship, the fuel is not a problem. You'll get enough fuel. So you need some capital to build the initial thing. That's available in Pakistan now. You can get seed, Series A, use that to build something incredible that has the traction, and there's no problem. You'll get money from any part of the world. And just below I'm showing, so you heard about first round yesterday. There are these 6 VCs. All of them are really top VCs. All of them cleared their calendar within a week to talk to Airlift. And normally VCs don't do that. They're busy, and it's not because I know them, because if it was a bad startup, they would ask their EAs to schedule it in 3 weeks. And they cleared it in a week, and it just happened. So that's the key takeaway. And then the final message for the founders here. So I started with a quote from a Western inventor, one of the best we've ever seen. And I want to end with a quote from one of the best Eastern philosophers, Rumi. So all the examples, they're great, they're inspirational, but they're just stories, right? So don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth. Thank you.